We all think we know Elvis Presley, right? The king of rock and roll, the jumpsuits, the moves, the whole legend. But behind all that, there was a whole other person that not a lot of people got to see. Today, we're going to look at this really special friendship he had with a gospel singer named J.D. Sumner. And trust me, it tells you so much about the real Elvis. The guy whose life was shaped by his faith, his incredible generosity, and the music that was, his true spiritual home. All right, let's get into it.
So to really get the heart of their story, we have to do something a little unusual. We're going to start at the very end. The day is August 16th, 1977, the day the world lost Elvis. But inside his home at Graceland, he left behind a clue, something that tells us everything about what was on his mind in his final hours.
So picture this, Elvis's bedroom, which has been kept exactly as he left it that day. And sitting there on his turntable is a single record. It's not one of his own hits, not some big rock and roll album. It was something way, way more personal.
What was on there was this special custom-made vinyl record called an acetate. The label was blank, except for just one word: stamps. It was a personal gift from his friend J.D. Sumner, and it had these 4 gospel songs on it. And according to J.D., Elvis listened to this thing almost constantly. It was probably the very last sound he ever heard. And that right there, that is the big question, isn't it? Out of all the music in the world, why this simple recording? To figure that out, we've got to go back, way back to the very beginning of their story.
So let's do it. Let's head back in time to Memphis in the 1950s and see just how this incredible, lifelong friendship got started.
It's kind of wild when you think about it. When they first met, they were from 2 completely different worlds. You had J.D. Sumner, this established star, the legendary bass singer for the famous Blackwood Brothers. He was the ultimate insider. And then you had Elvis, just a kid, really, a teenager without a dime to his name, who would just hang around backstage totally mesmerized by the music. He was the outsider looking in. So one night, Elvis has to admit he can't afford a ticket to the show. And in this just simple act of kindness that would literally change both of their lives, J.D. told him, "Hey kid, just come around to the stage door. I'll always let you in." And for years, that's exactly what Elvis did. That one small gesture, that's what started it all. And this friendship wasn't some brief thing. It lasted for decades. It starts back in the 50s with that kid at the stage door, and it comes all the way around to 1971 when J.D.'s group, the Stamps Quartet, actually joins Elvis's massive stage show and went right up until their very last conversation in 1977. Okay, let's jump ahead to the 1970s. This is when their friendship goes from being a backstage thing to being front and center, and Elvis gets the chance to pay back that early kindness, like 1,000,000 times over. The story of how the Stamps actually joined the tour is it's pure Elvis. So he needs a new group, right? His aide mentions J.D. Sumner. So Elvis gets their newest album and listens to it for pretty much 24 hours straight, just on repeat. After that, he picks up the phone, no audition, no nonsense. He just says, "I want the Stamps." And that was it. So at their very first rehearsal, JD's planning on just managing the guys, kind of watching from the side. But Elvis stops the whole rehearsal, looks right at him and says, "What do you think you're doing, JD? Get up here, I want you to sing." He wanted to hear that famous low bass voice that he fell in love with as a broke kid back in Memphis. It had come full circle. And man, this is where you see Elvis's incredible generosity. J.D. learned really fast to never compliment anything Elvis was wearing because he'd just take it off and give it to you. Like this, a 10-carat diamond ring worth $40,000. Elvis just gave it to him right there in the middle of a show. And believe me, that was not a one-time thing.
Not even close. For example, the Stamps needed a new tour bus. Did Elvis hesitate? Nope. He just handed him a check for $25,000 for the down payment. Just like that. He just wanted his friends, the people who shared his stage, to have the absolute best.
I mean, the list of gifts is legendary. Diamond watches, his own personal limo. But it wasn't just about gifts. Elvis also had this wild, mischievous sense of humor. He once pulled this insane prank on the Stamps involving a fake death threat and firing off blank pistol rounds in a hotel suite, all just to get a laugh. Their time together was an adventure, to say the least. But look, beyond all the chaos, the gifts, the pranks, the real foundation of their friendship was something a lot quieter and a lot deeper. It was this shared faith that they both expressed through gospel music. This moment, this tells you everything you need to know. Before his massive arena shows, Elvis would often have the Stamps come to his dressing room just to sing one song for him.
Sweet, sweet spirit. And he'd look at JD and say, I need that. It wasn't a rehearsal. It was about finding a moment of peace, a real spiritual connection, before he had to go out there and be the king.
And he didn't just keep that faith private. Elvis truly believed in the power of these songs, so he brought them out of the dressing room and put them right on the main stage. Think about that. In the middle of a high-energy rock and roll show, he'd stop everything to sing these powerful gospel hymns.
And this brings us all the way back to where we started. Back to that record player sitting in his bedroom, and to the final, poignant note of this incredible friendship.
After his very last concert in Indianapolis, as JD was leaving the dressing room, Elvis gave him a hug and said those words, "JD, I love you." That was the last thing JD ever heard him say. Just a few weeks later, the world got the news that the king was gone.
And so, it just makes perfect sense that the family entrusted JD with the funeral arrangements, and he honored his friend in the only way he knew how, by filling that service with Elvis's favorite preacher and the powerful gospel songs that had been the soundtrack to both of their lives.
So now we can finally answer that question from the beginning. That acetate on the turntable? It was so much more than a record. It was a connection to his oldest friend. It was a source of real spiritual comfort. In the end, it was a reminder of the music that, more than rock and roll, more than anything else, truly felt like home.
When you see him through the lens of this friendship, you see a totally different person. A loyal friend, a deeply spiritual man, and someone who, even at the absolute peak of his fame, never forgot the kindness of a guy who simply let him in the back door. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Beyond the icon, who was the real Elvis Presley?